Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a follow-on from last week where I very briefly gave a kind of an update in terms of where I've been and what I've been up to these past 2 years. And I also very briefly touched on the fact that my skin has been very kind of up and down and that I have actually had to go back to using steroid creams in order to manage my skin. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth today. So I'm going to be looking down at my phone every now and again just because I did take some pictures. So if I am looking down my phone, it's because I'm going to refer to the pictures and I will also put them up on the screen throughout the video. But I think what makes the most sense now is if we start from just picking up from one of my last videos, which was at the end of 2021. I had gone through a big flare-up and I had managed to get through the flare-up without using creams, and as I would kind of normally do if I had a flare-up previously. And that worked pretty well, I would say, on occasion, but for some reason it would be my skin would get, you know, I'd have a big flare up and I'd kind of get through it, and then I would have another flare up, and that flare up would be 10 times worse than the flare up I had just had. So my flare ups were getting worse and worse every single time. And I think looking back on it, you know, 2021 was a really, really shitty year for me. And I think for a lot of people, obviously it was COVID, but it was particularly bad because I didn't have a job at the time. So I was job hunting in a country where I didn't really know anyone, and it's kind of notoriously quite difficult to find jobs here anyway. I'd had some kind of other job dramas, and then on top of that, I felt like Singapore particularly was very, very strict during COVID. So it was just like very psychologically a very stressful time. Part of me, I think, at the time was very much like, have I made the right decision? You know, we've made this huge move across the world and I get here and things just really aren't working out. And then on top of that, I have to sort of figure out how I'm going to plan a wedding in the UK at the end of the year. So I'd say that was sort of the main internal factors that were really impacting my skin. And then I'd say the second thing, that obviously the environment in Singapore is it's quite an extreme environment, I would say. It's incredibly humid, it's incredibly hot. But then when you're not outside and it's hot and humid outside, you're indoors, and indoors there's aircon everywhere, and aircon is very, very drying. So there is something in particular with this flat that my skin doesn't really like. I think it's also because we never really open the windows. You can't really open the windows here because it gets so hot and stuffy and everything just gets very damp. So I think it was kind of those two things combined. The way that my eczema kind of expresses itself, I suppose, is I don't get eczema all over. I don't have that type of eczema. You know, some people have kind of redness all over their bodies and all over their faces. I don't have that. I have it in patches. So I will get concentrated patches of eczema, and at the time I had a very big patch here on my hand. Here it was very bad on my finger. I'll start putting in some pictures around my eyes, around my neck, and kind of sort of dabbed around here and there, maybe a little bit here and there sometimes. But I'd say that those patches I have, they are incredibly painful, incredibly sore. They would be oozing, there would be that liquid coming out of them. They would be so unbelievably hot and itchy. And it just got to the point where I was I was on the phone to my new boss who I was gonna start a new job. And this was kind of a week before I was gonna start. And she was saying things like, yeah, we're so excited for you to join our team. You're gonna be the face of XYZ. We're really excited to have you leading this and representing us. So the job that I was starting was a very interactive, very client-facing, and lots of kind of face-to-face meetings and interactions. And I was just looking at myself and thinking, I cannot go into the first day of work looking like this. If I'm supposed to be the face of this thing, this cannot be the face that I'm presenting. Of course, I got onto the phone with a doctor who very quickly prescribed me some steroid creams. And as you guys know, I'm sure most people who are watching this have been on steroid creams. You know how incredibly effective they are, and thank God that they are, right? I'm so thankful and so grateful that we have this type of medication. So I would say there absolutely is a place for steroid creams for managing symptoms, particularly when they are very, very severe. Like I would say that mine were pretty severe at the time. And then towards the end of the year, you know, things were settling down a bit more. So I had a job, there was a bit of stability there. And I did end up getting married. But even though my skin was lovely, I was like fully on the steroids at that point. I was using them at least every week, if not more often. Again, they were very good at managing the symptoms, but as soon as I stopped using them, my skin would come back. So this was particularly evident as well when I came back to Singapore from the UK. So there's a picture here of actually on my birthday, which was obviously was a really nice birthday, but things were really still very tightly locked down in Singapore. I was pretty upset that day because, as you can see from the photo, like I am still having some flare-ups. I was wearing sunglasses because I had it around my eyes, but also around my lips and my neck. And I just remember feeling like I come into Singapore and like the country is just kind of rejecting me. I know maybe that seems a bit dramatic, but you know, that is genuinely how I felt. I still had a lot of turmoil as to whether I had made the right decision about moving here. So let's now move over to the sofa and get ourselves a little bit more comfortable, shall we? So I think that kind of gives enough background in terms of what really set my skin off at the beginning on why I ended up going back onto the creams. The rest of the sort of the 2021, 2022, there's not a huge amount to kind of go into in terms of what my skin was doing, because as I mentioned, I was then back in that kind of pattern or that routine of using steroid creams for a week or so, and then, you know, kind of trying to get off them. And when I would stop using them, my skin would just come back to what it was, so I would end up putting the creams back on again. And I think that that's pretty standard. I think that's how a lot of people do manage their skin. I don't have a lot of pictures to show you, but I do have pictures to show you. There was on occasion when I tried to kind of get back off the creams again, just to kind of just see what would happen. And as you can see, my hand here in this picture that I'll put up was very, very, very bad. So it would come back very, very severely and very strongly. And obviously that meant that I would then have to continue using the creams. But I was still very conscious of the fact that, you know, I don't want to be just on steroid creams for the rest of my life now, or even for the rest of the time that I'm living here. So I did start seeing a functional doctor. I'll talk about that in a separate video because that's like a whole separate thing. So let's now fast forward, because there's a few things that I want to bring up. The first thing is, whenever I would go on holiday, my skin would get really good, especially places where there was no aircon. Like if we would go on holiday to, you know, I'm super lucky now, I live in a place where you can jump on a plane and you're on a tropical island in like an hour. Sunshine, the sea water, clean air, there's not lots of aircon. If there's lots of fans going on, for example, then my skin just absolutely loves that. So apologies, I keep having to take breaks because one thing that happens when you're pregnant is that you get very out of breath very quickly. I'm gonna show you just some of the creams that I was using. I was using one very, very mild one. I don't know if you can see that. So it says it's a 0.1% cream. And then there was one time as well, I think I was using one that was slightly stronger than this. This is the very, very mild one. And then I was also using, or I actually ended up buying this, but I ended up buying this just in a local pharmacy when I went to Bali, because I had a big flare up when I went to Bali for whatever reason. And it turns out that this one is actually very, very strong. And so when I kind of Googled this and found out this was quite strong, I did stop using that one. Okay, so let's take it now back to when I got pregnant. So when I got pregnant, that's when I really was like, I don't really want to be using lots of steroid creams. You know, I know that it goes into your system at some point. I don't know how it affects babies. Or not even a baby at that point, it was just like a growing fetus, I suppose. I did Google it and it did say it was perfectly safe as long as you're not using like the super strong ones and you're not kind of taking the sort of the oral tablets. But just for me, like I didn't really want to be taking or using steroid creams that much. In the first trimester though, it's, your hormones are going crazy, and my hormones for sure affect my skin. I felt like death, number one, and number two, I was getting quite bad skin, so I was getting quite a lot of flare-ups. So again, reluctantly, I was having to go back to using these every now and again. I did ask my doctor, is it safe, is it okay? She said, it's fine, as long as you use it sparingly. But again, I think it was just for me, I was just like, I just don't want to be on these all the time. So what I did, I really started concentrating really hard on identifying what my triggers were or what they are. I think I'll do a video on this because I think it's quite a good one, but I've always said that a plant-based diet really does help my skin, but I find it hard because, you know, you going on a plant-based diet, especially a vegan plant-based diet, you take out a lot of potential allergens. So common allergens, so things like eggs, things like dairy. So I knew that it helped my skin, but I wasn't actually very sure exactly what it was that was making my skin better when I go on plant-based diets. So dairy, number one, is for sure a trigger for me. And I noticed every time I have it, I would get very, very itchy and I would start flaring. What happens when you get pregnant, and I think especially now, especially in the 3rd trimester, your skin gets really, really nice. Like both your hair, your skin, and not just in terms of the eczema, but also just in terms of like, if there was like little patches of acne or little spots that I would get, like I really haven't had that at all, especially my 3rd trimester. So you can see now my hands are completely clear. And here as well. My neck is pretty much completely clear. You can see I have nothing anywhere else. Like really, really, like my skin is amazing at the moment. I have read that some people say that pregnancy actually sorts out their skin altogether and that it lasts after pregnancy. I'm not holding my breath for that, but I mean, that would be amazing if it actually stays this way. What I will say though now is that, so on top of managing my triggers, I also am very, very particular with the contact that my skin gets. So including the products I use, the materials, the clothes that I'm wearing, even things like I swapped out my towels. I've done a lot of different things. Again, I'm gonna go through all of these very practical tips that I think have really, really, really helped. So I just wanna finish off very briefly by talking about what my position is on kind of steroid creams and if my opinion has changed. I would say on the whole, it hasn't really. Obviously, as I mentioned before, super thankful and we're so lucky that we have this kind of medication available to us as and when things do get very bad. I think it's really great now. I've seen a few kind of dermatologists on YouTube who are finally acknowledging the fact that yes, cortisone creams can have and can result in something called topical steroid withdrawal, whereas I think previously there's been a lot of doctors who just kind of denied that it even exists or that it's not anything to do with the cortisone creams when it clearly is. So it's really good to kind of see that the medical community is now finally acknowledging the fact that yes, there are and there can be long-term consequences of using steroid creams. So often when I talk about steroid creams as well, I often get a comment, something along the lines of, yeah, but if you just don't use that much of it or if you don't overdo it, then you'll be fine, which is absolutely true. I'm probably quite a good example of that. But I think the problem is with steroids is that it's so easy to kind of start increasing the dosage because, and this is 100% my experience, is that sometimes your skin comes back worse than what it was to begin with when you are using your steroid creams. And I would absolutely also say that there have been times where I've been using them sort of one day after another and they sort of start to lose efficacy or they start to lose their effect. So I think that is the main problem with steroids. Like, yes, if you're using them sensibly, I'm sure they're absolutely perfectly safe, and especially the mild ones, so the hydrocortisones and things like that. But like I said, I think it's very easy to kind of get onto that slippery slope and start using stronger and stronger steroids, which I think will lead to consequences down the line. So my preference is obviously to not use steroid creams if I can, and I will, you know, do every other kind of natural, holistic way in order to manage my skin. Do I think steroid creams are harmful for everyone? No, I think you can use them perfectly safely, but do I think they address the underlying issues? No, I definitely don't think that they do. Let me know if you have any questions, if there was anything that was unclear in this video. As I mentioned before, I do want to put in a disclaimer just to say nothing I say is obviously medical advice. Please don't listen to me over your doctor. If your doctor is telling you something different, please listen to your doctor. I'm purely just talking from my own experience and just giving opinions. So if you like this video, please obviously give it a thumbs up, like it, comment on it, and I will see you next week for the next one. Bye.